Hey everyone, Eclectic Handyman here, and today we're going to be taking all the insides of this 30-year-old toilet with this older style ball mechanism, and we're going to use one of these Fluidmaster Universal all-in-one kits and replace everything inside of there. So here's what we need. This kit, which I got at Lowe's, which was about $20, has everything that you'll need for probably 98% of toilets out there. This one is a Kohler, and it does need, I happen to know, this triangle triple type gasket. And I happen to know this because after doing another one of these toilets in the house, the directions in the Fluidmaster specifically say if you've got a 3-bolt pattern and it's Kohler, you need that additional gasket. So we've got this gasket as well. Normally, and again, probably 95% of the toilets, especially on newer houses, you're not going to need this, but we will use this today. Also, I decided to go ahead and buy a upright handle. This is not required. I just thought that the white handles would match the white handles over here, so I went ahead and bought this as well. This is about $15. The kit does come with a brand new handle, plastic handle, that'll work just fine. If you want it. That's the Fluidmaster kit. Also, you'll want to replace the supply line down here. No reason not to use probably one of the stainless steel lines. They're so cheap. This was $5 max. A little bit older of a house, so we've only got a short line right here, 9-inch, but a lot of toilets are probably going to use 12, so just measure and see what you need. Last thing I'll say before we get started is my personal opinion is there is no reason to take a toilet that has these old components, and if it's leaking or not functioning, trying to replace just one part, just the flapper, just the handle. This entire kit, again, was just around $20 for everything that we need. And it's, you know, you could basically say newer technology, be it for plumbing, that than what we have right here. I just don't see the reasoning in spending $6, $8, or $10 to replace just the drain or the flapper or the handle. Just go ahead and do the whole thing all at once. You'll be happy that you did. All the seals will be new, and it's not that difficult to do. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, next up to mention are some of the tools we'll need. Just your basic set of pliers. I also am going to use this this wrench. This is a 5/8 inch wrench. I believe that's the side. If not, I forget which one it is. Oh, actually this one right here, we're not even going to need that because both of those I'll be able to screw with a set of pliers. But when we get to the new one, I'll be able to put this on and then use this this Craftsman wrench that I have right here in order to tighten down that supply line. The level is after we tighten down the tank just to make sure it's level. We need a crescent wrench so that we can get off some of the different parts and pieces underneath, and just pliers and I think the wire cutters I have just in case for maybe opening some things and taking things apart. We're also going to need, I just have like an old butter bucket that we can slide under there so that when we get the water out, and then also we're going to need to dry the tank, and we'll use a sponge of water and then put it in here. That'll get it dry so that we can take the tank off. So let's go ahead and shut the supply line off, turning it clockwise, and then go ahead and flush the toilet, and let's let all that water drain as much as possible. And we'll get it as far down as we can. And now it's time to start taking these components out. There's really no finesse here. The biggest thing is we just don't want to break the tank. All right, so if you want to unscrew this to get the flapper off, we can do that. We're gonna have to take some of these parts off from the bottom. But honestly, I'm just gonna go ahead, and as you see, because I'm replacing everything, I'm not even gonna spend time on that piece right there. So I just took that one off. And next up, we're gonna have to take this nut off, and you can notice right here, and I'm actually screwing this clockwise. This one is the opposite of what you would think, this particular bolt right here. And what that's gonna do is we can slide that right down, and then we're gonna be able to remove this out of the toilet. And I just gotta, actually I should be able to remove this from here first. So I just gotta use both hands. All right, there we have it. I was able to pull it out. Also need to disconnect it from the flapper at the bottom, and we'll continue on. To remove the flapper, all you need to do is take that metal piece off right there, slide that nut off, and there goes the handle out. And the next piece, what we're gonna need to do is disconnect this supply line from both of these sides. We can use, these are supposed to be hand tightened. And if they are, you should just be able to pull this out. Now, before I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and sponge this water out from inside the tank. It's just gonna make our life a little less messy. I'm just gonna come down in here, sponge it out, and then put it into the bucket. We'll get that nice and dry. By the way, quick side note, you might notice this is an automotive sponge that I used previously on the car. There is so much sediment down there. I do not recommend, if you did the same thing I am and you're just looking for stuff around the house and didn't buy something, that you use this on the car, because you're probably gonna scratch it. So because of all that sediment down there, I'd use this only for projects or go ahead and throw it away. So I'm gonna continue to do this till this is dry, and we'll move to the next step. Okay, so I've got the tank all dried out, so we'll have the least amount of leakage. Again, a butter bucket works pretty nice. These, again, if they're just hand tightened, you should be able to unscrew them kind of easily. If not, you could use a wrench and just loosen these. Again, we've already turned off the water, so we should just be able to go counterclockwise. And as you can see, there's one just coming into our bucket, and then here comes the other. We will be throwing this line away. Again, it's only $5. You can see I took it off. And if we come up under here, this is the next thing that I have to take off. All right, so what I'm going to use is we're gonna get this wrench up in here. I'm gonna loosen this. And what that's going to do is that will remove this piece right here. Then we'll be able to take off the 3 bolts from the tank. And you might be wondering, maybe your toilet looks like this as well, and you've got some kind of goop on top here, some kind of like water sealant. Don't worry about those, that'll come right up. But basically those are the 3 bolts, 1, 2, and 3 that hold down this Kohler toilet tank. Once we have that down, then we'll be able to disconnect this from the bottom. Also, if you want to go ahead at any time, you can just pull this tube out so that they're 2 separate components. All right, so let's start loosening the bottom. Okay, so I got my wrench under there, and again, these parts are pretty easy to loosen. So I'm just loosening it up, and eventually I'm going to be able to just use my hand here to completely get this off. Let's go ahead and give it a try. There we go. Again, I got my little bucket under there. It's going to take this washer off. I'll just brace it from the top. Keep unscrewing this all the way down. It's going to pop right off. Take that off. Bingo. And there you have it. To remove the toilet tank, the existing nuts that we have here are actually just the kind that you can use your hand or your wrench. I've already loosened that, not with a wrench, but just with my hands right here. There's going to be 3 of them. We need to take all 3 of these off. And I'll tell you that the new kit has, in my opinion, for this Kohler tank, an improved system of mounting this down. Let's just take a quick look at that, because what we're going to have here are, this seal is actually quite thick, and they get compressed down by these bolts and these nuts. I think this is a much improved gasket and sealant for the tank than what we had on there before. Probably why the previous installer had to put that sealant on the top of the bolts because making sure that no water leaked through. So I'm going to go ahead and release all 3 of those, pull this tank off, and then we'll take the flapper and drain off of here. Okay, so I got those 3 nuts off the bottom. They're just plastic. One did prove to be a little bit stubborn because the sealant came off the top, so I had to hold that bolt and from moving. That's what the sealant also does, is keeps it in place for me to loosen those. But I was able to get all 3 off, and it's time to remove the tank. There might be a little bit of residual water, so just watch out when you lift this tank up. A little bit of water might come out. And you can also just dump whatever is left into the sink. So I'm going to go ahead, just lift straight up. Again, I'd probably just maybe dump that little residual water in the tank. Find yourself a towel, put it down, and now we can start working on the underneath. And here we go. This is the seal that we needed, the specially Kohler seal that we needed. And we'll be pulling this off. And it doesn't matter because we're not reusing this one. So I've actually cut it here before and then pulled this off. We have a nut here that we have to loosen. And then the drain will actually go through the toilet. Okay, so that's going to remove all the pieces. We can wipe down the inside, and then we can begin to install our new kit. So let me go ahead, and I'm just going to tear this seal and pull it off, push these bolts through. All right, so I've cut the seal. I just used some wire cutters. You could use a knife, whatever. And there's a couple different ways. You can just pull these insulators off the bolt and then push them through. I've also had luck before just knocking them through. Just be careful to be gentle on the tank, getting those through. Or you can cut it out. Anyway, just to get this out, and then we'll be able to remove this seal as well. If you check it out, look at that, I'm just pulling it off, and there we go. And it's really old. And so, thank goodness we got the new one. Put that to the side. And we need to loosen this nut and check it out with mine. This may not always be typical, but it's already loose on there. So we need to remove this nut. So I'm going to have to hold this in place. Remove this nut. This will go straight up through, and we will have a bare tank. Two side pieces of advice. Even though you don't have to open the toilet lid, and all of this is the clean incoming water, I'd still recommend cleaning the top of the toilet and whatnot before you start this project, because your head's going to be around and down the lines in the tank, and maybe even lighting a candle. It's not that it's really gross. You're not working on the underside of the toilet, but still, you're talking about years old plumbing here. So anyway, we're going to keep moving and get these last 2 bolts pulled out and this nut removed. One of the other ways to get this off also is you can cut right here for the wide part, and then you can remove this, and then bingo, push that right through. Another little tip. All right, so I got this loosened. I'm gonna remove this nut right here. And again, all of this will be replaced. You don't need to save any of this if you use that kit, the all-in-one. Bingo. That's it. Turn our tank up. Take out the remaining pieces. Let's go ahead and wipe down that inside of that tank, and then the installation is the reverse. Now is also a good time. You've probably got a bunch of old parts laying around to go ahead and throw those away, clean up the work area, and get ready for the new parts. So each of them has their own set of instructions. So the new Kohler seal tells you exactly what we need to do and which direction that seal needs to go up into the tank. It comes with all of those parts, and you'll know instead of hand tightening now, we'll be able to use a wrench on the bolts. And then also we have our new parts as well that we'll be using. The one exception here for this particular project, because we have this special Kohler seal at the bottom, we will not be using this red seal. So if you're doing this project with a traditional 2-hole bolt, I've done this before and I've used this. The seal comes with it. This is the one that'll go there. We'll not be using that one today, so we can just put that to the side. Also, the set of instructions that comes with the new all-in-one replacement parts is excellent. And it also has the diagram and step-by-step instructions. So if you need to pause and go back through, take a look at these instructions. Nothing real intimidating here. I can tell you, I'm not a plumber. I've done this several times and on multiple different types of toilets. And once you get the gist of it, it's really not that difficult. And so we'll continue on. All right, so the first thing we need to look at is we have the new fill valve and the new flush valve. And by the way, on this valve, there's this piece of cardboard. Go ahead and remove that so it doesn't go down the drain when you start. All right, so we need to make sure, one of the first steps here is this is the critical fill line on the fill valve right here. This pipe needs to be 1 inch lower installed. But the thing is that these get screwed in to the bottom, and depending on the toilet, this might be actually above. So we need to mark a line and actually cut this piece of plastic off. If there was any part of the project that's actually just a tiny bit of work, it's probably this one right here, making sure that this is right. So let's go ahead and put these in the tank. We are not fully installing it. We just want to do it to eyeball to make a mark, and we'll use a hacksaw and hack it off. One of the other things on the fill valve here that you want to look at is that this is can change height as well. You just grab a hold onto the gray part and the bottom part, and you can actually twist, and it will go up and increase in height, or you can decrease it in height. The idea is that when it's in the tank sitting flush, you want this so it's not above and you don't want it all the way down here. You want it near the top. So I know on this tank, just kind of eyeballing where it is right here, and I've done one of these before. So we'll go ahead and, that's about right there. And we'll go ahead and get that. And then now we can go ahead and put this in. So what I've done is I'm just taking the nut right here, and this is not the actual installation at this moment. All I'm doing is getting these set up, hand tight. Don't hurt them when you turn the tank. Don't put too much pressure. Now look inside the tank here. This pipe needs to be 1 inch below that critical fill line. We can already tell that this is too high. Now you can eyeball it, or you can use a tape measure and see how far down that is. So we're looking at about 3 inches down. So from the top. So we need to be at least 4 inches down, because we need to add that inch. And then we need to mark that pipe so that it's at least 1 inch below. And so I'll just take a marker and I will actually mark the pipe at that level, making sure that it's at least 1 inch below that fill mark on our fill valve. I'm going to go ahead and take this back out and take it to the vise, and I'm going to go ahead and take the top off. All right, well, you know the old saying, measure twice, cut once. That's exactly what I did. So I went back, made a few more measurements, and got a new, more accurate mark. I have put this in the vise. You can hold this by hand on the edge of a table. I have barely put, this doesn't even have pressure. You do not want to clamp down and break this. I've just wrapped it, and I just put it in there enough so that I will be able to brace it with my left hand and go ahead and cut this piece off right here, which will make it up to code, just as it specified in the instructions. This top level will be 1 inch below that critical fill line on the fill valve. So I'm just using a hacksaw, cut into this, and then we'll go back to the toilet. Okay, so I finished cutting, and one test you can check real quick is line up the mounting areas of the fill valve and the flush valve, and then eyeball. We can see that the critical fill line and the top of this you've definitely got that 1 inch. By the way, you can always cut more, but you don't want to have to buy this again. So if in doubt, cut a little less, check it out, and then just cut off a little more. I have done that before. All right, so all the prep ready, and now we are ready to start installing our seal. So again, we're going to, using with respect to the diagram, we're going to push that seal up through. We'll push the bolts down from the top. We will put our fill valve through, the flush valve, which is this one with the large nut. We will secure it with the nut and the washer, and then that part will be inside the tank. So let's go ahead and get started with that. I've taken the parts out of the package. Here is the washer, which, by the way, was a little confusing. Home Depot sells this washer. They're the only ones that sell the, well, maybe other than online, the actual genuine part. There's an aftermarket one at Lowe's, but it didn't get as good of a rating, so I went to Home Depot for this. The fill valve kit, the toilet kit I got from Lowe's. But what was a little confusing on Home Depot's site is I couldn't tell if this washer came with it or not. It does come with this kit. The nut that was in the diagram, that's the one that came with this kit. So we do have all the pieces. We've got the nut, we've got the washer, we've got the seal. So the first step is we need to go ahead and push these up through the hole, just like that. And we will do one at a time. Push that on through, and then the third one. And there we go. All right, so that's secure in place. Now we need to drop this in from the top. All right, we got that through. We'll check the orientation here in a second, but essentially this goes into place, and then our nut. All right, and we can hold it from the top to brace it. Put this on. That was just the flush valve that popped up through there. And then we will put the bolts down through the top. So let's go ahead, push these down from the top in, and we'll go ahead and start tightening this down. All right, so I've gone ahead and hand tightened down this washer. You will need a large set of adjustable wrenches, and larger than an ordinary set, in order to get that nut locked down. But as you had seen on the old toilet, it was probably only hand tightened, but the instructions are to hand tighten it, then go 1/4 turn further with a pair of large adjustable wrenches. So now I need to put these bolts through the top. And if you come down inside here, you might be wondering about orientation. Basically, I went ahead and used the diagram as orientation if you're not sure. But at the end of the day, we want this flapper. The handle will come over here, and this flapper is aligned with the handle. We don't want it over here on this side of the tank. So that's what's most important, is that the handle will come here, the chain will get pulled up, this flapper will come up, and then the toilet will operate. So the next step we want to do, if we can get down in there, is we want to push these bolts down through the top. All right, so we push them down through the top, making sure that nothing gets obstructed. There we go, we've got all three. The way this system works, this is pretty cool. Once we got in from the bottom, you might notice this extra distance here, that there was like that nipple on it. What happens is these will compress when they get pushed down and create a seal around the hole. I know this because I had done it on another one. So it actually works really well. You don't need any extra silicone or goop or anything around it. These will compress, spread out, and it creates a seal around the hole. So let's go ahead and look at the bottom again. So we've got these sticking through, and on all three, those will mount to the tank. The last thing the last thing we need to do is tighten this down. Then we can go ahead and put it on the tank. And when we put it on the tank, it'll go through, and then we'll have these washers that will tighten from the bottom. I can tell you right now, you can use either an adjustable wrench, or I'm going to go ahead and use a 1/2 inch deep socket. And the reason deep socket is because This is going to be rather long, so regular socket. We don't want to over tighten. You do not want to over tighten. I'm going to tell you everything on this toilet rebuild kit. Most of it, the instructions are to hand tighten everything, with the exception of this. We need to create a good seal and have this compress on the rim of the toilet. So let's go ahead and finish tightening this down, and then we're going to put this on top of the toilet. Okay, so now that I've got everything tightened up and I've got the bolts in, go ahead and lift up this tank, and we need to put it onto the 3 holes. So if you just look down, there we go, and they're in. All right, so the next step is going to be to get the washer and the nut, and we'll go under here. And if you can't see them through the hole, there we go. I pushed it down, and we'll add the washer, and then we'll add the nut, and we'll start tightening it down. All right, so these ones are more than hand tight. And as I mentioned, I'm going to use 1/2 inch deep socket to go ahead and tighten these down. How do we know how tight? We do not want to over tighten. What we need is that seal in the middle, the one in here, needs to compress, okay? It needs to compress, and we need to have a good seal. And I know it's hard to focus in there, but we need to have a good seal between. If you can always retighten, but you'll get the gist of it. Once you start locking down on these screws and you start tightening them down, you will see it compress. There's instructions about making sure that the tank is level. So you're going to want to tighten all 3 evenly. Then we'll use a level on the top of the tank and make sure that we've tightened them appropriately once it's compressed. Then we can put the fill valve in, our handle, and we're getting towards the finish line. So let's go ahead and start ratcheting these down and continuing on. All right, so I finished tightening down the bolts. It's probably going to vary for you. That's about the length it ended up being. The biggest thing is, again, you just want to make sure that's compressed down and there's no gap between the top of the tank and the toilet itself. So the next step is we need to install the fill valve. The first thing that we're going to do is, this came in the kit, we're going to push this washer on the end. So we'll just push this just like that, okay? You see that? That gives a seal right here. And then we're going to take this piece and we'll tighten it on the tank over there. This is hand tighten only. Do not use a wrench. It tells you that. So as far as orientation goes, we've already measured the height. We'll drop that down. You want this kind of angled right about here. That's what the diagram, just a little bit forward. And down here, we will go ahead I'm holding and I'm bracing the top, and this again, hand tighten, do not over tighten. The seal's on the top, that presses down. That's all I'm doing. All right, so now we've got the fill valve, the flush valve. All right, the next step is to take the clip. We'll take this clip right here and we will put it on. There we go. Just have to push it over. And then we will take this right here, and I'll explain this in a minute, but essentially this can, if you push down on it, it's kind of this new system, you may have not seen it before. If you push down and then roll it up, it actually pinches. And the first time I used it, I didn't understand. You actually have to push it down in the channel. It reduces the velocity that the water moves through to actually lessen it. What that does is this is what's getting filled, which fills the toilet, but then the tank is filling at the exact same time. So what's happening is that you want the speed of that what's filling in the toilet and the tank itself to be about the same speed. So you can use this to adjust to kind of keep those in sync. And so this part right here, we can just move out of the way. It's just got a couple little clips. And if we come over to this side right here, we can go ahead and insert one end. It's really easy to do. And so if I just push that on, there we go. And then the other side goes right here. Now, here's the thing. It's too tall. It tells you to cut this to length. So I'm actually going to use the wire cutters, or you can use a pair of scissors. I'm going to cut this to length. Give it a little bit of slack, but I don't want it bubbling up above the toilet. All right, so I'm just going to move this back a little bit. Probably cut off about that much. I'm bracing this valve with my right hand, and I push it on, and boom, those clips can go down over on both sides if needed. All right. So now we've got, and I'll go ahead and take that piece out. And now it's going to be time to start to install the handle, which is going to hold the chain, and then put our return line in. Okay, so we're on the handle now. Now remember, I did get this aftermarket one, but they're all about the same. So what this one does is it goes through here, put the rubber gasket on, and then there is a reverse thread. So it actually goes like you're loosening. Let me get that thread started properly. There we go. And so it's actually like I'm loosening, but it's tightening. And then the way this ends up working is we will put this on here, drop it down, and you can see we'll be able to connect the chain here so that when we press the toilet valve down, it then does this lifting action right here. So we can put this wing nut on the bottom side here. And again, they're all just, the one that comes in the kit is even simpler than this. And I wouldn't even consider this to be extra challenging or anything. You just have to look at the directions and get that. So get this wing nut here. My hands are a little bit big. There we go. Get that situated on there. And again, just wanted to show you what this action is going to look like. So we'll just do a little bit of adjustment, and then we'll connect the chain and get this one set up. All right, so we got the handle done, and I locked it down. The most important thing is you just see this action right here. You just don't want it hitting the tank. And then the last piece is this chain off the flapper. So you can adjust this chain right here. There's plenty of extra length, but the long and the short of it is what you need to do is when you hook it on one of these holes that's proper that's lined up with this, you want about a half an inch or so of slack. It'll take a few times adjusting it because you got to account for going in the hole and being at the top of the loop. So I'll go ahead and put this in. All right, so let's see what we got here. Do I have about a half an inch? Yes, I do. There's a little bit of slack. Let's test the handle. What happens? Yay, the flapper goes up. That's exactly what we want. Now, when the water gets in there, all the other physics will go to work inside here. So the last piece that we need to do is come down over here and install this supply line. This is going to be pretty simple. So, let's go ahead and grab our new 2 9-inch, and I just leave this on temporarily just in case, make sure everything's good, and then I'll cut this off right here. So now this one's a little bit weird, the plumbing. This is an older house. I kind of got to adjust it a little bit. These are hand tighten only. All right, excuse me, the top is hand tighten only. This plastic to plastic. The bottom one down here, this is the one we will actually use a wrench. So let me get down in here, make sure not to cross thread, nice and smooth. I love this style of wrench right here because I can go on, I can come down, and I'm just gonna hold it in place and support it, although you could use an adjustable wrench, no problem at all. You don't need the specialty wrenches like this. I'll make sure. This will make a nice bond. No pipe sealant needed here because these are, these ones right here, it's not pipe to pipe because they have these seals in here. Again, you'll be able to see when you check for leaks at the end. I don't want to over tighten this. I mean, I'm putting some oomph on it. We'll check it again later. Just make sure that it's not leaking. And then we're going to come up in here. All right. And do not cross thread. This is the, again, the hand tighten only, just like this top one that we did. One little tug. Nice and smooth. Again, these are the instructions from the manufacturer. No pipe sealant, nothing, just hand tighten this. You'll be able to check for leaks. That should be plenty good. All right, so now we've got our new stainless steel supply line on. We have completed the toilet. Up top, it is time to turn on the water. So we'll go ahead and turn it on. And it's filling. So we'll give this a minute here. We have several adjustments that we talked about. We can adjust this for the height of the float, for how high the tank gets. There's another adjustment down here. This type of flapper that came on this refill kit goes from 1 to 9. 9 being the largest flush, or if you want to save water, you can turn that flapper down. I usually put it on like 7. So I just turned it down 2 notches to 7. You put it wherever you want, based on what you need. And again, we talked about this. This, see the water coming through right here? If I adjust this down, it will start to lessen the strength of how quickly the toilet fills up in unison with the tank filling up. But anyway, you can make those adjustments. So at this point, we want to check for leaks all around the toilet, specifically at the 3 bolts underneath and at our supply line. We want to make sure that there are no leaks on the supply line and that there are no leaks on our bolts. We'll let this fill up, flush it, test it, see how it works. All right, so we have successfully filled up the toilet. Now the float right there, based on the old water line or the water line that you wanted at, you can turn it left to reduce and it will turn off faster, or you can turn it to the right and the bowl will add more water. Once again, checking, you see that the water line is below where we cut off. We've got still, this is sitting above. That would cause a running toilet, by the way, if this water constantly was going down into there. And then we are definitely below our critical line right here. So let's give it a shot. Let's go ahead and use a handle and see how it works. We got that little bit of slack like we're supposed to. And again, based on how you have the flapper set, the longer that'll stay open. I've got this pinched down just a little bit to slow down the water. Again, that's a proprietary mechanism that I've seen on these newer ones. I don't know how many years they've been doing that, but I remember about 5-7 years ago, it didn't have that. It was just the tube going over. Anyway, pretty nifty. Again, it's about the speed that the toilet is filling up. And there you have it. Once that float gets to the top, it'll stop filling. Check for leaks, and we are done. So in probably, you know, if this is your first time doing it, it's going to take a little bit longer, but in probably an hour or so, we've taken apart everything and gone from this to this. So we've got basically upgraded a brand new renewed toilet. I hope this helped you. I hope you've refreshed your toilet and it's not leaking. Again, check it for leaks a few times, and we will see you next time for more how-to videos on the Eclectic Handyman.